The easiest advice you could ever get as somebody who owns camera gear or anything of that nature, it's got to be date the camera, marry the lens. Which is funny to say considering my last video, but to be fair, most of the lenses that I want to marry more or less cost a house to own a set. But this is 2025 and we are deep, and I mean deep, into the world of affordable cine lenses. But it feels like there's a new, affordable cine lens, compact cine lens being released every 5 seconds. I swear, every time I blink, there's a new pocket anamorphic, there's a new prime lens, there's something out there, and I just can't keep up. So why am I talking about a lens from a few years ago? And better yet, why am I saying that the DZO Vespid Primes are still my favorite affordable consumer cine lens to own as a owner-operator? So these are the DZO Vespid Primes. In front of me is the 40mm and the 21mm. These have been my workhorse lenses for my cinematography for about the last year now, but these are far from new lenses. These came out years ago. And as much as I love that DZO now has the R-rolls and even their new Thypox Samara Cs, I'm still very happy that I have these, and I don't think I'm going to be getting rid of them anytime soon. So let's talk about why. Let's get through the boring stuff and talk technical for a second. So it's an all metal housing. Thing is pretty sturdy. The thread measurement is 77mm. I have these with PL mounts right now, but they do come with little conversion kits to turn them into EF. And of course, like any respectable cine lens, the focus throw and your aperture are all these nice, smooth, little thick mechanical rings. But more importantly, this bad boy covers up to VistaVision as far as the sensor size go. They're the exact same size, and you're going to find that throughout the entire lineup of the DZO Primes. And overall, they look cool. They're not too heavy for what they are. They're not the sexiest lenses on the market, but you know what? For what they are, I dig them. I don't care about charts, I don't care about any of that crap. I simply care about how are these lenses affecting me as a creative, an artist, a filmmaker, cinematographer, all that crap. What we need to understand about lenses, and I've talked about this before, but essentially what lenses are today is what film stocks were doing back in the days of analog film. But in the age of digital filmmaking, instead of choosing a film stock to dictate certain characteristics, skin tones, and color that affect our image, the lenses are now doing that work for us in digital. So with that said, what do these lenses do that make me like them so much? Well, for starters, overall, they're what I call a little bit of a sweet spot. And I might get a lot of flack for that, because lenses like this that came out in the market at the time were kind of dogged on a little bit because they quote unquote had vintage characteristics, but these vintage characteristics may have simply just been a byproduct of cheaper manufacturing. Because these lenses, when they came out, they were only just above $1,000 a pop per lens, and now buying them used, you can get them as cheap as $600 per lens, which for a cinema lens is an extremely, extremely low price. But with all that said, I actually find these to be pretty sharp for what they are. When I shoot these lenses at a T2.8 or anything above that, they're tack sharp and they work more like commercial glass for me. But when you stop it at a T2.1, that's when you start to get a little funkier, softer of an image that I really dig. The center of the frame is still sharp as hell. You'll find a little stronger focus fall off. You'll find more play in the bokeh, but you also get stuff like, say, chromatic aberration, which is probably the biggest visual complaint people have with these lenses, but me personally, I could care less. I actually think people are kind of adding chromatic aberration back into their color grades nowadays. Now, personally, for me, in the argument against sharp and vintage, it's project to project. I have used my trusty Soviet lenses on so many projects and I love them, but they don't work for every project. I have used my Sigma lenses in Canon L series glass, a multitude of doc projects, even short films, but you know what? Sometimes I just want a little more, even though I can appreciate what a sharp piece of glass can do. These really are the sweet spot for me. I can get something that feels sharp, that feels high def in a way, and I can avoid a lot of the muddiness I get from my Soviet lenses, but I'm getting a little more character and artifacts in the image than I would say a Sigma or just slapping on, say, glimmer glass or a Pro Mist filter in front of photography lenses. More importantly, here's the real reason why I like these lenses, and I might catch some flack for this one. Oh baby, I can't wait to say this. These lenses are just your Cookes. The way the focus rolls off, the way it flares, the way the skin tones and the colors are rendered in this glass remind me so much of when I have worked with the S4Is, the S4i minis, and my favorite, the Speed Pancros. I'm a Cooke fiend. When in doubt, Cooke are my lenses when it's time to rent for a short film or bigger projects. But I ain't got Cooke money for everything. And not every project requires a big beefy Speed Pancro with all the character that it brings, or does it require me to shell out for the S4s or the S4i minis even? And I mean, Jesus guys, when we're talking about lenses that are what? The minis are like 6,000 or more a pop. The S4s can go up to 10 grand a pop per lens. And if you find newly rehoused Speed Pancros, and God forbid that they're full frame versions, you're paying for that house. I'm also a fan of the amount of selection that you get from these lenses. This has to be one of the widest selection of focal lengths of any of these, consumer level lenses that have been hitting the market lately. And quite frankly, this has to be one of the widest selection of focal lengths in any lens set, really. You got standards like the 35, the 75s, your 50s, your 24s, but I can get weird focal lengths like the 21 or the 40, really hit the sweet spots of these focal lengths I like, especially with like this 40 mil. Oh my God, I have used this 40 mil like a madman. I like the width of 35 millimeter. It feels like classic cinema, but I enjoy the compression of a 50 mil, but I feel like a 50 mil is such an overdone focal length and it's just barely compressed. But I'll tell you what, a 40 millimeter on a full frame sensor is the definition of my sweet spot for focal lengths. I just like them. I like the weight. I like how they look. I like how they operate. Even pulling my own focus when pulling straight from the barrel instead of a follow focus system or a manual follow focus system, it feels smooth. I feel like I have full control of it. And it doesn't take me a freaking trip around the world to get the focus from one end to the other. Now, are there lenses better than this? Abso-freaking-lutely, but that's not the point. The point is, are they good enough to represent professional work, to be on something like, say, the Sony Venice, to be on something like the Arri Alexa, or to improve the imagery of something like your FX3 or smaller? Absolutely. It used to be this incredibly impossible thing to own lenses like, say, the K35s, your super speeds, rehoused FDs, Cooke lenses. They were almost exclusive to rental houses or to people who were willing to shell out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for glass. But consider that gap bridged, because lenses like this, and then you mix them in with something like the Nisi Athena Primes, the new DZO Aurals, even the rehouse Helios lines and those Soviet lenses, you even got Mikey, and you even got all of these small anamorphic primes coming out now. It truly is the best time to be somebody who owns a cinema camera or is a cinematographer who owns their own gear, and they also want a good lens set to boot, instead of trying to figure out how to make their photo lenses feel more cinematic. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you think this angle's whack, I don't know, let me know. I get bored, man. I'm just trying to. I'd love to hear your comments on what your favorite lenses have been in the last couple years, especially with all these lenses coming out the woodwork. And look, if you want to talk my DZOs, feel free, man. This is YouTube, it's the internet, it's the Wild West. Sometimes these things just gotta happen. This has been Davis Rohr with the Six Shop. I'll see you on the next one, hopefully with something a little more educational. Goodbye.